Welcome, dear viewers of Turkish series stars, to the place where whispers turn into narratives and every heartbeat finds its echo. Before we dive into tonight's tale, make sure you subscribe, tap the bell, and, if you want to support this space a little more closely, hit the subscribe button and join our family. Because what we're about to share is setting timelines alight and stirring memories many thought were packed away for good. It happened on a quiet evening, in a tucked-away cafe not far from the Bosphorus, where the clink of cups and the low hum of conversations wrap you in the illusion of privacy. There, under the soft spill of warm light, Yüksel let a sentence slip that no one in the room will forget, a confession that sounded more like breath held for too long finally being released. She lowered her gaze and murmured, more to herself than to anyone else, that she still carried Barış Baktaş with her, that his name hadn't faded, but the thought of turning back scared her. It wasn't carelessness that made those words surface. It was the kind of truth that is polished in silence, worry by worry, like a slow tide smoothing a rough stone. Those present say her eyes seemed to hover between the glow of yesterday and the uncertainty of tomorrow. Because the story of Yağmur and Barış has never been the kind you can fold into a neat headline. From the first time they shared a set, something ineffable threaded the air between them. Some labeled it professional synergy, others, with a touch more wonder, called it a connection that slipped past the cameras and embedded itself beneath the surface. They never framed it openly, never offered the public a clear declaration, but glances lingered a beat too long, gestures said more than words, and laughter found them in those small in-between moments no one was supposed to notice. Then came the break. No statement. No carefully written post. No tidy explanation. Just quiet. A quiet so dense that every fan began writing their own endings, their own reasons, their own what-ifs. And now, with that single admission from Yağmur, that quiet is suddenly crowded with meanings it can barely hold. Some mornings I open my eyes and wonder where we'd be if we hadn't drifted apart, a confidant says Yağmur confessed later that night, a soft vulnerability running through her words. What she revealed carried the weight of a tug-of-war, the longing to lean back into the comfort of what felt true and the dread of walking once again into the same shadows that once pushed them apart. Fame, the relentless commentary, the way love becomes communal property the moment it's glimpsed through a lens, it all started to feel, to her, like an unseen shackle. There was a point, she told her friend, voice thinning, when my own story didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. On the other side is Barış Baktaş, absorbed in scripts and sets, always in motion yet never entirely out of orbit of what had marked him. In a casual sit-down a few weeks ago, he let a phrase fall with disarming simplicity, that some feelings are stubborn, that certain memories do not learn how to vanish. Heard now, alongside Yağmur's confession, it plays like an echo, an answer that took the long way around. As ever, when two narratives brush against each other, the audience leans in. Within hours, timelines and comment sections were overflowing. Words like Yağmur Barış, second chance, and love's return floated everywhere, each more hopeful than the last. Some swore they saw Yağmur lingering over old message threads, others insisted that a brief melody posted on Barış's story matched a tune they used during late-night rehearsals, a secret soundtrack from days that can no longer be called simply past. People might never know what was deliberate and what was just coincidence, but for those who follow them with a protective tenderness, every little hint turns into a sign, and every sign becomes a promise. What struck the public most deeply, though, was one last phrase Yağmur shared as the night unraveled, that if he reached out, she wasn't sure she would have the strength to turn him away, and yet she feared the ache could return with a sharper edge. There is a recognizable brittleness there, one that belongs to anyone who has tried to stitch together what was once torn, the craving to go back and the instinct to guard a healing wound. A close friend, trying to be both gentle and honest, asked the question that hangs in the corners of any silence like this: what if he's already waiting? Yağmur didn't answer. She just let the thought land and stay there, and for a heartbeat you could see her reckon with an idea that felt new and familiar all at once. The friend added, almost in a hush, what if the thread between you hasn't snapped at all, only loosened? In the days that followed, Those around Yağmur noticed her retreating into a small private world. The shoebox of paper fragments you keep even after you swear you've tossed everything, the photographs you promise yourself you'll delete then never do, the keepsakes that no one else would recognize but you couldn't bear to misplace. There was a half-smile one afternoon when she held a Polaroid at arm's length, and a tightening of her jaw when she tucked it back into its place. "Maybe I misread the map," she said once, "or maybe I read it too closely." Meanwhile, on set, Barış had a moment the crew won't soon forget. In the middle of filming a romantic scene, his timing faltered. The dialogue came, then paused, and instead of moving on, he stood there, eyes unfixed, as if something familiar had brushed past him, a few notes of a song he used to know. It took only a blink and the scene resumed, perfect as ever, but those who were there remember the stillness and the way it felt like a memory had tugged with quiet insistence. Television programs began stitching together retrospectives, carving out time for a story the audience had never stopped telling in their own heads. Fans resurfaced the moments that mattered to them most from the pair's work, calling them pieces of a romance that paused at the most inconvenient moment. When a reporter asked Barış recently what he'd like to say about Yağmur, he didn't elaborate. He just said that she would always hold a meaningful corner of his life. It was barely a sentence, yet it was enough to send speculation spiraling all over again. And then came the magazine interview with Yağmur. A glossy spread, soft fabrics, bright light, and a line that stayed with everyone who read it. "Sometimes you step away to save yourself, but the heart is a stubborn student and refuses to learn the lesson you teach it." No names were mentioned. None were necessary. Even as people tried to steady their expectations, a persistent rumor crept across the industry that both Yağmur and Barış had been invited to the same charity gala scheduled in Istanbul in just a few weeks. Elegant. Inevitable. Unavoidable. A room large enough to hold hundreds and still somehow intimate enough that a single glance could feel louder than an entire orchestra. Would fate prefer to pass them by, or nudge them gently, unmistakably, side by side? Fans are already making plans. They're cutting together video edits, polishing old interviews, writing letters they'll never send, and organizing groups to be there, not because they want to invade a private moment, but because they hope for a shift, a sign that the story might be braver this time. The air is heavy with prediction, the kind that makes you breathe a little faster without knowing why. And under all that excitement sits the question that will not move. Will time be kind enough to lend them the courage to attempt what was never truly broken in the first place? Will they risk that old ache to reach for something that once felt like home, a home they both still carry, one way or another? Before we close, I want to hear from you. Should Yağmur, Yüksel and Barış Baktaş take that leap and try again? What do you believe deserves a second life, what they had, or who they've become since? And tell us which other artists you want to see featured here next. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Turkish Series Stars, tap like, and, if you'd like to support us beyond a simple view, click the subscribe button. Your presence is what makes it possible for us to follow the quiet truth behind the noise. Until our next revelation, we'll be right here, where soft-spoken confessions finally find their voice.